Hello and welcome back to Fast Effect Double Speed Magic the Gathering from ELD's Time Vault games. Here we are catching up on our backlog of ELD Premodern Opens. These are also the New England Premodern Massachusetts Monthly, as hyped up by Duress Crew. Tremendous turnouts all year long. Looking forward to getting these in front of everyone and see how the metagame has been evolving here. Bradley on a 4-color Terrageddon deck, facing a bit of a brew here. Drew on Parallax Control. The black is going to be for Parallax Nexus. We'll see how that works out. Treetop Village, a legitimate threat, and Sylvan Library. That card is just very capable of burying these slower control decks. The 4 life that you pay to get extra cards, very much worth it when your opponent doesn't have a significant clock. And of course, any shuffle effects are incredibly good as it turns into almost like a ponder effect. Sensei's Divining Top activation, where you get to select from those top 3 cards. So fetch lands at a premium. Call of the Herd as a token on board. Classy token there for Bradley. The actual Odyssey player rewards one. Love to see that. And this Parallax Nexus has chipped away at his hand, but I mean, that's a lot of work to make that impactful. You're going to need to stifle the Leaves' play ability. Oh, and Bradley's not screwing around here. We have an Armageddon. Snuff out while that Swamp is still on board, but this Geddon's going to go through. Looks like a nice portal printing of that. Both players with just enchantments in play momentarily. I know which one I would rather have. Bradley shouldn't have too much difficulty rebuilding here with an active Sylvan. Whoever makes their land drops in recovery of this going to be favored. Few cards underneath the Parallax Nexus for now, but if a Stifle doesn't come out, those cards will just get back to Bradley's hand, and all of that will be for naught. Go fetch. And Meddling Mage likely going to be naming Stifle here. Stifle would stop those cards from going back. This is a trick that people are doing a lot with Parallax Tide, turning into a one-sided Armageddon. Virtually a win condition. All right, so Chain of Vapor bouncing this Meddling Mage. It looks like Drew's committing to the bit here, going to stop those cards from going back, but at this point he will have traded a Stifle, a Chain of Vapor, and the Parallax Nexus for these 3 cards, so fairly underwhelming. Stifle does, in fact, keep those cards in exile. Now, that is not how you draw it up, but he is still fighting. Bradley 12 life. Has a couple of more draws off of Sylvan if he chooses to. Wasteland, taking out that factory. I feel like Wasteland is probably underplayed overall in Premodern. It's certainly a bit of a metagame fluctuation depending on how popular and powerful the monocolored decks are. And of course, a lot of decks can venture into second color territory that don't necessarily have to. So a deck like Goblins, you can run it mono red, or you can go into white, green, or black very easily. Unfortunately, we don't have Volcanic Island for format identity reasons, but Daze actually used to be a hell of a card in Goblins, as an aside. This Weathered Wayfarer, really going to make it difficult for Parallax Control to do anything with factories. Ability to tutor up the Wastelands on demand. Make that card kind of a must-kill. Meddling Mage represents a clock when you're only at 13. Not the fastest clock. And a Rashadan Port. Going to be able to potentially keep Drew off of some mana. Mox Diamond helping out. Another Armageddon. That's a haymaker if he decides to go with it. I don't know that that would resolve here, but certainly worth checking. No, he's just going to stay the course, happy with his Rashaden port. And it looks like a 1-mana removal spell. Let me know in the comments which one that was. I don't think I saw the life totals change. There are quite a bit of removal spells in black, even though it's amongst the least played colors, if not the least played color period in Premodern. There is talk about unbanning a card to potentially give it some juice. Here's Terravore. Terry is a big old turtle. Lorgoyf, I suppose. And yeah, Drew's packing it in. One hit from that is death. Built-in death touch. Basically, the late game, that card is just unbeatable for value. 3 mana for something that's potentially, bigger than a Dreadnought. Hard to argue with that. As they shuffle up here for game 2, gotta say, I really love the way that Premodern is played out, especially in our community. It is a format where people are comfortable brewing, enjoy exploring this very large but limited card pool. I mean, it is a huge pool, to be certain, but it doesn't get any new stuff. So when we have Hot Wheels sets featuring Mario Kart designs, if people are really unhappy with that, they can completely ignore it and just focus on what they love about the game in that kind of nostalgic setting. Though to be fair, there are a lot of people playing Premodern who weren't even alive when these cards were first played, so it's not just a nostalgia format. I would not sleep on getting the cards that you actually want to play with. We've already seen Phyrexian Dreadnought and Mox Diamond really start to take off. It'll be interesting to see what happens with some of these other printings. Gaia's Cradle and Survival of the Fittest do have that gold border printing, which kind of takes some of the pressure off. A Weathered Wayfarer here, real threatening, not necessarily toward the life totals, but with a Mox Diamond, that means Bradley's already kind of caught up on mana, but also has less land, so Weathered Wayfarer is active. Mox Diamond's so good in this deck. Almost got the original sketch for Terravore a few years back. It's on eBay. It was only a few $100. Wish I did actually grab that one. That one would not have broken the bank. Beautiful card choices here for Bradley. Got the JSS City of Brass, OG Windswept Heaths. Just love seeing the old cards. But also Premodern is the type of format where you can play with newer versions, unlike old school, where that's a rule. And I think it fits the kind of ethos of the format. Back in the 2000s, somebody came out with a new version of a card. It was like, oh, cool. Like, where's that from? A magazine? Is it from Japan? Like, what's the story with that? There really isn't some kind of built-in negativity around new printings. Meddling Mage. Accompanying Terravore. And gonna try and protect from Snuff Out. Interestingly enough. Smother also, it's a heck of a card. I don't know if the 4 life is the way that I would want to shut that down. Snuff Out, they generally are going to need to pay the 4 life, or they're paying 4 mana, which is fine. Very hard to do that. Another Meddling Mage. Team Pakula here. This one's stopping Chain of Vapor. Terravore smashing in. Not naming Smother might mean that Bradley has some insight into Drew's deck list. They may know each other well enough that he knows Smother might just be, say, a 1 of or a 2 of. Ooh, nice. Did we actually get to see that? A Teferi's Response stopping Rashad and Port. I didn't even have that one queued up in the list here. But Teferi's Response actually doing what it's supposed to do. That is a rarity. However, it looks like it may still be in a losing effort. There's a 2-turn clock here. I do like this pre-combat Sylvan. This will force Drew to crack a fetch if he wants to counterspell it. Sometimes when you're running Terravore, you actually do want to take actions in your first main to force your opponent to crack fetch lands in order to use their spells, pumping the Terravore. And looks like 10 damage coming in, and he's at 10. Actually, that's just a wrap. But just like that, Bradley picking up the first game here as we get back into covering a year full of Premodern here at ELD's Time Vault games. It's good to be back. Hope you enjoy the ride.